Okay, so now we look at the first type of animal tissue, which are epithelial tissue. So you can check your answer based on the handouts given. Okay, so first of all, what is epithelial tissue? Okay, so epithelial tissue, it will cover all body surface, okay, and also it will line body cavities and hollow organ, okay. And epithelial tissue also, it is one of the simplest tissue, okay, tissue yang simple, okay, and then it is made up of epithelial cell that closely packed together, okay. And then if you look at here, okay, epithelial cell anchored on basement membrane. Okay, so for the example, kalau kita tengok for this type of the epithelial tissue, okay, so this is the epithelial cell. Dekat bawah ni adalah basement. So means that the epithelial cell anchored, okay, on the basement. Okay, and then for epithelial tissue, there is no blood vessel between cell. Okay, so what are the main function of the epithelial tissue? The main function is for protection, absorption, and also secretion. Okay, so now we look at, okay, the criteria, the two criteria for classifying epithelial tissue. So how we classify the epithelial tissue? Okay, it is based on the first one, we look at the number of layer. Okay, and then second, based on cell shape. Okay, so for based on number of layers, so we can classify the epithelial tissue either it is simple or stratified. So what is the meaning of simple? Simple means the epithelial tissue consists of single layer of cell. Kalau kita tengok contoh based on the diagram here, kalau ada perkataan simple, so let's say this one, it mentions simple squamous epithelium. So bila ada perkataan simple dekat sini, so means that the epithelial tissue consists of only single layer. Same as this one. So this is simple cuboidal. Maksudnya dia cuma akan ada satu layer sahaja. Okey, tapi apa beza dengan stratified epithelial tissue? Kalau untuk stratified epithelial tissue, it has multiple layer of cell. Okay, so what you have to know is this one. So this is what we call as stratified squamous epithelium. So since this epithelial tissue is stratified, so it will consist of more than one layer of the epithelial cell. Okay, and then next we look at the second classification. So how we classify the epithelial tissue? Second, based on the cell shape. So the cell shape of the epithelial tissue, either it is squamous, cuboidal, or columnar. Okay, so if you look at here, what is squamous? So the shape of the squamous is like this. Okay, later I will explain. So this is cuboidal. Another one, columnar. Okay, so now we look at, okay, the types of the epithelial tissue. The first one, apa yang awak kena tahu adalah, you have to know about the simple squamous epithelium, simple cuboidal epithelium, simple columnar epithelial, and another one, stratified squamous epithelial. So how to classify? You have to, or how to differentiate? You have to differentiate based on its structure, distribution, and also function. Okay, so now we look one by one. So kita tengok dulu untuk simple squamous. Okay, so the structure. First of all, you have to mention the shape of this epithelial tissue. So since nama dia adalah simple, so maksudnya it will consist of only single layer of cell. And then squamous. Squamous means the shape of this cell is the cells are flat and thin. So structure dia adalah flat. Flat ni maksudnya sekata lah, tipis. Okay, and then it has central nucleus. Central nucleus means that the nucleus is located at the center of the cell. And then where we can find the simple squamous epithelium? So its distribution is at air sac of lung and also lining of blood vessel. Okay, so the function of the simple squamous epithelium, since the cells are flat and thin, so it is suitable as the passage of material through diffusion. Maksudnya proses of diffusion senang untuk berlaku pada simple squamous epithelium. Okay, so now we look at the simple cuboidal. Okay, so since its name is cuboidal, so means that the shape of the cell is cubical in shape. Cubical means berbentuk cube. Macam ni lah. Okay, and then cell have similar height and width. Kalau awak tengok dari segi panjang dan juga kelebaran untuk simple cuboidal epithelium ni dia adalah sama. And then the nucleus of each cell located at center. So sama dengan simple squamous. So the cell, okay, the nucleus of the cell is located at the center. Okay, so the distribution of the simple cuboidal epithelium, okay, it can be found as the lining of kidney tubules and also gland duct. And then the function of the simple cuboidal, it is specialized for secretion and also absorption. Okay, so now we proceed to the next type of epithelial tissue, which are simple columnar epithelium. Okay, so awak kena perhatikan betul-betul lah the shape of this simple columnar epithelium. So the cells elongated. Elongated means dia memanjang from basement. So basement dekat sini, dekat bawah sini. So the cells are elongated. And then we can also state that, okay, the simple columnar epithelium, okay, the cell is cylindrical, okay, berbentuk silinder, and then nucleus is found lower in the cell, closer to the basement. Okay, so if you look at the position of the nucleus here, okay, so the nucleus is found lower, dia berada di bahagian bawah sel, which is it is close or near to the basement. And usually the simple columnar epithelium, it have goblet cell to secrete mucus. So kalau awak nampak structure yang macam ni, okay, so this one kita panggil sebagai goblet cell. So the function of the goblet cell, it will secrete mucus. And then surface may have cilia or microvilli. Okay, so some of the epithelium, or we call that simple columnar epithelium, at its surface, okay, maybe it have cilia ataupun microvilli. Okay, and then the distribution of the simple columnar epithelium, okay, it is lining of digestive tract, upper part of respiratory tract, and also lining of fallopian tube. Okay, and then the function of the simple columnar epithelium, secretion, especially mucus. Because of what? At the structure of the simple columnar epithelium, it has goblet cell to secrete the mucus. And then one more, it is for absorption. Okay, so saya starkan dekat sini because of what? It have microvilli to increase surface area for absorption. For the example, lining of small intestine. So dekat small intestine tu ada microvilli. So bila ada microvilli, so it will increase the surface area for the process of absorption. Okay, and then next we look at the last tissue of epithelial tissue, which are stratified squamous epithelium. Berbeza dengan yang tadi, tadi tu semua simple, but this one is stratified. So remember, stratified means that this epithelial tissue consists of multiple layer of cell. Maksudnya dia akan ada lebih daripada satu layer of cell. So that's why dekat sini dia mention lah, based on the structure, it has several layer of cell, and the lower cell are cuboidal and actively divide. So kalau awak tengok the shape, okay, at the lower cell here, dia berbentuk cuboidal, and this cell will be actively divide. Okay, so what happened? Division of the lower cell will causes the older ones to push outward and becoming flattened. So bila sahaja the lower cell is divide, so dia akan menyebabkan the older cell to push upward. Okay, so what happened to the upper part of the cell here? Dia akan membentuk flattened cell. So that's why sebab tu kita panggil dia sebagai simple squamous shape. Okay, and then the distribution, okay, where we can found the stratified squamous epithelium is at outer skin, lining of mouth, esophagus, anus, and also vagina. Okay, so the function of this stratified squamous epithelium, it will provide protection from abrasion. Okay, so this is for epithelial tissue. Okay, so now we proceed to the second type of animal tissue, which are nervous tissue. Okay, so the function of nervous tissue, the function is in receive, processing, and transmission of information. And the cell in nervous tissue that generate and conduct impulse are called neurons. So actually neuron, we can say that it is the basic functional unit of the nervous tissue. And then transmit signal called nerve impulse. Okay, so if you look at here, so kita boleh tengok dekat sini dulu. So type of nerve cell, we can classify it into neuron and also neuroglia. So based on neuron, there are 3 types of neuron: sensory neuron, motor neuron, and also interneuron. So neuroglia, it will support, nourish, and protect neuron. Okay, so first of all, we look at the structure of neuron here. Okay, so actually this is the structure of the motor neuron. So if you look at the structure of this neuron, it has dendrite. Okay, and then here is cell body. Inside of the cell body, it has nucleus. Okay, and then the long structure here we call as axon. And then the axon, maybe it was surrounded by a structure that we call as myelin sheath. So this is the myelin sheath. So myelin sheath is made up by Schwann cell. Okay, and then the gap between the myelin sheath, maksudnya kita kata the gap, ruang, okay, di antara myelin sheath ni. So this one we call as node of Ranvier, and then at the end of the neuron here we call as axon terminal. Okay, so kalau kita go through function for each of the components in the neuron. So for the cell body, it contain nucleus and other organelle, and then dendrite. So here is the dendrite. Okay, so dendrite short, highly branched, and then it will receive incoming stimulation and conduct electrical signal to the cell body. So dendrite ni dia akan terima the incoming stimulation, and then what happen, dia akan conduct electrical signal tu pergi kepada cell body. And then axon, it refers to the longer structure, which is it is longer than dendrite. Kalau dendrite tadi the structure is short, but for axon the structure is longer than dendrite, and then enclosed by myelin sheath. Okay, so kalau awak tengok based on the structure of axon here, it can be enclosed or surrounded by myelin sheath. Okay, and then axon, it will conduct impulse away from the cell body. Okay, and then myelin sheath. So what is myelin sheath? So it is formed from Schwann cell that enclose axon. Okay, tadi saya dah tunjukkan. Okay, Schwann cell. And then the function of myelin sheath, it will act as electrical insulation in neuron. Maksudnya dekat sini, kalau kita tengok electrical impulse, actually it is in the form of electric lah. Okay, so bila sahaja impulse dia bergerak, okay, melalui axon, okay, dia tak boleh melalui myelin sheath. Sebab apa? Myelin sheath tu dia bertindak sebagai insulator. So what happen? This impulse will jump through the nodes of the Ranvier. So since impulse jump, so that's why it will accelerate impulse transmission. Okay, and then for nodes of Ranvier, it is small uncovered part of axon between myelin sheath. Okay, so yang ni saya dah tunjukkan tadi. Okay, so myelin sheath is here. So small uncovered part, maksudnya gap in between the myelin sheath. So we call as the node of Ranvier. Okay, and then between further increase the speed of impulse transmission. Alright, so now we look at the types of neurons. So remember, for neuron, it has 3 types. The first one here we call as sensory neuron. This is interneuron. The other one motor neuron. So what is sensory neuron? Okay, kalau awak tengok based on the structure of the sensory neuron, the cell body is located at the axon here, in between the axon. Okay, so the function of the sensory neuron, it will receive signal from receptor or sensory organ. Okay, maksudnya dia akan receive the signal from the receptor, okay, ataupun sensory organ, and transmit impulse to central nervous system, or we call as CNS. Okay, CNS, okay, CNS, it contain of brain and also spinal cord. Okay, so apa yang awak kena ingat adalah sensory neuron, it will receive the signal from the receptor, okay, ataupun sensory organ, and then it will transmit the impulse to the central nervous system. Okay, and then for interneuron, okay, so this is the structure of interneuron here. So it will found within CNS, which is brain and also spinal cord. Okay, so interneuron berada pada CNS, and then what happen to the interneuron? It will integrate, relay or store sensory input. So dia akan terima impulse yang datangnya daripada sensory neuron tadi, and then what happen? It will integrate, relay or store, okay, the sensory input. Okay, and then for motor neuron here, okay, it will transmit nerve impulse from the central nervous system. Okay, maksudnya interneuron tadi kan berada pada central nervous system. So, apa yang berlaku kepada impulse from the central nervous system? It will be sent to the motor neuron. So, motor neuron, it will transmit nerve impulse from the central nervous system to the motor organ or effector. Okay, so motor organ or effector, contohnya adalah muscle or gland. Okey, so kalau saya bagi contoh dekat sini, contohnya kalau misalnya awak terpegang cerek panas kan. So dekat kita punya permukaan kulit ada reseptor. So what happen? Once kita terpegang cerek tu, automatik tangan kita akan terangkat. So yang tu adalah contoh macam mana kita kata berlaku transmission of the impulse. Okey, so maksudnya kita punya reseptor tadi dia akan bagi signal kepada sensory neuron, and then sensory neuron, it will pass the signal or it will pass the impulse to the central nervous system. Okay, sebab dekat central nervous system ada interneuron, and then what happen? Interneuron dia akan integrate, okay, relay, and also it will store the sensory input. Lepas tu dia akan transmit that impulse to the motor neuron. Okay, lepas tu motor neuron akan transmit impulse pergi kepada motor organ or effector. Okay.